G'day and welcome to the second episode of Tartarian Truthers with your hosts Casey
Hi.
and JoJo. And have we got an episode for you? But first, we'd like to say that we are so grateful for the response that we got from our first episode. Thank you to everyone who watched, subscribed, and took the time to leave a comment or send us a message. You know, it really gave us the confidence to get this episode out to you as soon as possible. And as you know, we don't live near each other, so we're still in lockdown here in New South Wales. And you know what? Everything's done via Zoom. Everything.
Sure is.
So if you take a look here, we do everything: our celebratory wine drinking, our funny setups with weird backgrounds in the kitchen. It's pretty funny. But you know what? We're super excited to get this episode out to you. And Casey, what is it? What are we talking about today?
All right, Jojo, I am so excited about this. So it is the building blocks of Australia, and it's such a big topic that we actually decided halfway through to break it up into two parts to make it a little easier to digest. So settle in and get ready to learn all about the building blocks of this great nation, because it's an absolute cracker of a tale, isn't it, Jojo?
Yes, it is. Let's get into it. Okay, so for those of you who didn't grow up in Australia, the first fleet was commanded by Captain Arthur Phillip. He was the boss. He was in charge when they landed in Sydney. He made all the big decisions. Huge responsibility, huh?
Yeah, I reckon.
So the ships arrived at Botany Bay between the 18th and 20th of January, 1788. And according to the first census of 1788, the white population of the colony was only 1,030. And the colony also consisted of 7 horses, 29 sheep, 74 pigs, 6 rabbits, and 7 head of cattle.
Okay, so very small numbers of everything in those early days, Jojo.
Mm-hmm.
And taking a quick look at this direct quote taken from the Dictionary of Sydney.org website, we can see that it wasn't just people and livestock that were in short supply. Check this out. Even before the fleet's departure from Portsmouth, Phillip had anticipated the adoption of brick as a construction material. Indeed, the cargo manifest of the Transport Scarborough carries a reference to 5,000 bricks. That was enough to construct solid foundations and walls for a small number of government buildings. Wooden brick moulds to form the clay into unbaked bricks were also stowed in the holds. Although, for reasons that remain unclear, just about every type of building tool was lacking. Philip's first request to London for stores included house axes, carpenter's axes, pit saws, set saws and cross-cut saws, files, augers, nails, paint, and lead. So how bizarre is that, Jojo?
So bizarre.
They came all the way to build a new colony, but lo and behold, they forgot to actually bring any tools with them. So until the second fleet arrived with the next lot of stores, I'm assuming not a lot could be done. So no axes meant there wasn't any way to clear the land. Remembering that if we follow the official narrative, when the ships rolled into Sydney Harbour on that fateful day, it would have looked something like this.
Wow.
Yeah, so thick, dense bush, the trees would have been coming right down almost to the water's edge, and it would have been like that for as far as the eye could see in both directions. It's still dense like that now in some parts of the Greater Sydney area too, and you can be in thick bushland like this by driving an hour in any direction from the Sydney CBD. So it would have been an astronomical job to clear the land required to start building a colony and to grow crops and farm animals, especially without tools. Okay.
That is so ridiculous, Casey. And to add insult to injury, Captain Phillip also forgot to plan for the people who were actually going to start the building of the colony. And this quote, once again, comes from the Dictionary of Sydney.org website, and it shows that they had, in the end, just a handful at best of convicts that were even remotely skilled in brickmaking and laying. Listen to this. It also seems strange that Philip could find only one man skilled in brickmaking. This was James Bloodworth, a London bricklayer and builder whose career had come to an end almost 3 years earlier following his conviction for forgery. Fortunately, several other men were identified as having brick-related occupations. Oh my gosh. But then, Casey, they had a bit of luck.
Oh, thank goodness for that.
Captain Philip arrived on the ship, the Scarborough, and although he'd forgotten tools and workable labour force, he did remember to pack some bricks. Just not enough. Okay, have a look at this. Some 5,000 bricks were brought from Britain to the transport Scarborough, but that's only enough to build, say, a food store. What was needed was a local supply of workable clay. It was found within weeks in 2 creeks running into Cockle Bay, Darling Harbour. By May, reports said 20 to 30,000 bricks were ready for firing. How lucky was that, Casey? They just happened to come across some workable clay right there and smashed out 30,000 bricks in 4 months. Sounds totally feasible, right?
Yeah, well, not really, JoJo, because when I started to do a bit of research into brickmaking in the 1700s, this is what I discovered. So, handmade bricks used to be very commonly used throughout the UK. The process involves putting the clay, water, and additives into a large pit where it is all mixed together by a tempering wheel, generally still powered by horsepower. Once the mixture is of the correct consistency, the clay is removed and pressed into molds by hand. Once shaped, the bricks are laid outside to dry by air and sun, where they will be drying for 3 to 4 days. After this process, the bricks are transferred to the kiln for burning. So that's a pretty long and arduous process, right? Finding all the materials needed to make them, then hand molding them, then drying them in the sun, then lastly, they had to fire them in the kiln.
So does that mean that they had to build a kiln to fire the bricks first then?
You'd think so, JoJo, wouldn't you? But
I would hope so.
there's no mention of that anywhere in the history books, is there?
No, there isn't.
But don't worry, because we know, JoJo, that this is all absolutely definitely true, because we have some of the very first bricks ever made in Australia that were used to build the first government house way back in 1788. What a lucky find, huh?
Hang on, Casey. I can one up you there. Because look here. They also found a keystone from the first government house, and luckily they were very thoughtful and carved their initials and the year. Now look at that. I'm pretty sure they were illiterate, but anyway. But you know what? Here we have some tangible evidence of this incredibly tall tale.
Yeah, how considerate of them. Okay, so let's take a closer look now at the first government house, because it was the first major European building to apparently be erected on mainland Australia. Now, this quote comes straight from a government website. Using convict labour, the construction of the new residence and office of Australia's first governor was built with 5,000 bricks imported from England and bricks made locally from clay, imported lime, and shellfish from Darling Harbour. The symmetrical 2-storey building was Georgian in style with a hipped roof. The house had 6 rooms, 2 cellars, and a rear staircase. Contemporary illustrations show that many exotic plant species were grown and the first orchard planted in the front of the house. At the back of the house, there were outbuildings, the kitchen, bakehouse, stables, offices, and workrooms.
Wow. Now that is pretty impressive, Casey. So, according to the official story, Governor Phillip apparently laid the foundation stone for the first government house building only 4 months after the first fleet's arrival in January 1788. And they're saying building commenced in May 1788 and took just over a year to complete.
Okay. Hang on a second. Hold up. Let me just get this straight. So within 4 months of the first fleet's arrival in Australia, they'd started building Government House.
Apparently so. Apparently so.
How? I mean, they didn't have any building supplies, remember? They were waiting for the next lot of ships to come with tools.
Mm-hmm.
And that didn't happen until way into 1790, if we're going by the official history books. This is a quote that I found from the migrationheritage.newsouthwales.gov.au website. It says, between 1789 and 1791, the colony at Sydney Cove was critically short of food. To make matters worse, the supply ship HMS Guardian was wrecked off South Africa before it reached the colony, and HMS Sirius, one of two of the colony's navy vessels, was wrecked on Norfolk Island. In desperation, the HMS Supply, the colony's second navy ship, was sent to Indonesia for food. Hopes were raised when a vessel arrived in Port Jackson in 1790, but it was not the Supply, but the first of a second fleet of 5 ships carrying over 730 more people.
Okay. Now I'm really confused. This whole story is falling apart right before our eyes, Casey. And to highlight the inconsistencies and contradictions even more, we've got this little tidbit of information from another trusted website about the history of industry in Australia. And now listen extra carefully to the part at the end. In those early years of Australia's first settlement, industrial and commercial enterprises were simply non-existent. All there was the need to establish the means of producing the basic necessities of sustaining existence in the new colony, and indeed, the government provided such means. They founded a small number of workshops for the free settlers so they could manufacture their own flour, salt to make bread, their own candles and leather, their own tools and simple domestic items that could be used for cooking and such. Nearly everything, though, had to be learnt from scratch. The population was so small and the labour available so poorly skilled that the only hope for any meaningful economic development was quashed at the outset. Private business ventures did occur, but invariably failed to prosper as there simply wasn't domestic demand. Anything that was needed that these first few unskilled labourers were unable to produce was generally provided by imports.
Generally provided by imports. Okay. But we just learnt that the next lot of supplies or imports didn't arrive until 1790. So how did these people survive for 2 years with nothing more than what they arrived with?
I really don't know, Casey, because that a pretty big to-do list, huh? I mean, they had to do all this in a new, hot, harsh, and almost inhospitable land.
I honestly don't know about you, JoJo, but I can't believe that we've all fallen for this load of crap story for so long. It's just totally ridiculous.
I know, it's just plain stupid. But guess what? Hang on, Casey. I've got one more quote from another trusted website. And I tell you what, it's going to make you crack it. Surprisingly, very little physical evidence of the first fleet's arrival and establishment of what became the city of Sydney was survived. There are few official documents, even one as important as the original of King George's official instructions to Arthur Phillip to establish the colony, has gone missing.
What? No way. So you're telling me that this is all hearsay and innuendo then, JoJo? There's no actual documented evidence anywhere that any of this stuff actually happened. It could all just be one big made up story.
Believe so, my friend. But the historians always like to find the artifacts, little tidbits and pieces that add credit to their stories. So you can imagine how excited they were when this happened. In 1983, before commencing construction on a new multi-story building, remains of the first government house were discovered in an archaeological excavation. Following the discovery of the remains, further high-profile archaeological exploration, the largest urban excavation undertaken at the time in Australia, uncovered the vestiges of drains, privies, foundations, walls, and cuttings. In addition, excavations also revealed artefacts including Australia's first locally made bricks, window glass, roof tiling, china bottles, broken tobacco pipes, printing remnants, and dog bones.
Uh, Hold up, Jojo. Did you just say window glass?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Okay. Let's take a look at this next slide. Throughout the 19th century and through to the 1930s, Australia imported all of its flat glass requirements from suppliers in Britain and Europe. Pilkington Brothers from St Helens in England, established in 1826, made its first shipment of glass to Geelong in Victoria in 1856. So I'm not sure, Jojo, where the glass they say is from the first government house actually came from. Maybe they had a secret stash of window glass on the first fleet. But we can see from public record that officially the first import didn't happen until 1856, which is 68 years after the first fleet arrived.
Okay. Wow, that's an incredible find, huh?
Mm-hmm.
As we can see so far, when you really delve a little deeper into the official history narrative, there are holes everywhere. It's actually pretty funny. Like, actually, seriously, laugh out loud funny because nothing adds up.
It is. It's hilarious. But wait, there's even more.
There can't possibly be more.
It gets even more ridiculous, trust me. So these are the tools, Jojo.
Mm-hmm. So these are the tools of the trade from the 1800s. Starting on the left, we have a handheld drill. The bottom middle, we have a collection of tools that are simply labelled as convict tools. They're on display at the Hyde Park Barracks in Sydney. Then we have some more handheld drill bits. Top right corner and top middle picks are both tools used for stonemasonry. So these were the top of the line back in the early to middle 1800s. And this is the best you could get. These were the tools they were actually using to build amazing structures like this.
Wow, would you look at that amazing building? I can't believe how extremely talented the stonemasons and construction workers were in the 1800s to build such exquisite and intricately designed buildings.
I know, look, wow, look at that. I am getting total Harry Potter vibes from this picture, Casey. I mean, look at the columns, the arches, the balustrade. It's all so detailed and perfect.
It is, Jojo. It's absolutely beautiful. And check out this building, also a part of the main campus. Can you even imagine how they built that in the 1800s with those basic tools?
You know what? I can't, Casey. It seems virtually impossible that this could have been done in a time of horse and cart. And looking at the history of tools, we know that the first power tool wasn't invented until 1895.
Yeah, that's right. So, a German engineering company by the name of CNE Thien combined the power of an electric motor with a manual drill to develop the world's very first power tool. So, the drill was really heavy. It weighed 16.5 pounds or 7 kilos for those in the metric world and was powered by a large but relatively weak DC electric motor that didn't turn very fast. And to use the drill, the operator had to use both hands, grab it by two handles opposite the motor, and then lean against a chest plate at the back of the drill to help press it into the work surface. So pretty big and cumbersome, right? And to make matters worse, it would be another 20 years before someone actually improved on that design.
It seems more and more unlikely, that all these buildings were built in a time with little to no technology to assist people in pulling off such incredible architectural feats.
Yeah, that's right, Jojo. I mean, let's take a look at this image on the left. It's a manual crane, and this particular one wasn't invented until the late 1800s. Now, they can't lift higher than the length of their jib, which is the crane's lifting arm. And they were also heavy, so they weren't easy to move from place to place. The image on the right is another early crane. I don't have the exact date for that one, but I'm assuming it's from the early 19th century, and it's possibly steam powered. But the very first hydraulic cranes, similar to the ones that we're familiar with today, weren't readily available in the UK until the 1860s. But unfortunately, I can't find much on the history of cranes in Australia, and specifically when they started to use hydraulic cranes here. But they did use gantry cranes. They've been around for a long time and are usually used to load ships, but could also be used occasionally in construction. But once again, they're limited in how far and high they can lift. So, Jojo, from just a brief look at the tools and the construction methods of the 1800s, it's mind-blowing to think that a building like this was built way back then.
Honestly, this is one of my favorite buildings in Sydney. And I think this, along with many, many other structures dotted around Sydney, are absolutely magnificent. And to think that for this building, the Sydney Town Hall started in 1869 with such basic and almost primitive tools, it's unbelievable.
It is. It's so unbelievable, Jojo, especially when we also think about how they had to transport materials in those days too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, by bullock team.
Or by horse. Take a look at this image. 18 horses to transport hay bales. Can you imagine how many horses they'd need to transport stone or huge columns on some of those buildings?
Or how many camels? Oh my goodness, seriously.
Okay. This has got to be the best fantasy story that I've ever heard. And we could keep going on all day, couldn't we?
We really could. There's so much more.
But we're going to have to leave it here for now. We've left you with lots and lots to ponder. And we'll get back to you on part 2 of the Building Blocks of Australia very soon. But before we go, we've got another flashback to share with you. This is an ad that used to be on TV for the museum theme park that ran from 1975 to 2003. I think everyone who lived in New South Wales went on at least one, if not 2 school excursions here as a kid. It was an up close and personal indoctrination tool. Yeah. And looking back, it was just as ridiculous as everything else that we've just discussed. So we're going to leave you guys here. Enjoy a little trip down memory lane of old Sydney town, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
They sailed out here in chains on ships that have hanging for steel and bread. And the reason that we're here today is those that went ahead. Whoa! I want to go back to early times, go back in history. I want to go back to old Sydney town to find out why I'm in. I want to go back to old Sydney town, I'm an Australian. I want to go back to old Sydney town to where it all began. The fight and the skite and the downright delight, and I want to go back to see the women and men who way back then started my history. How did they live? How did they die? I want to go back to see the women and men who way back then started my history. Whoa! I want to go back to early times, old Sydney town's the way. I want to go back to old Sydney town, it's changing every day. I want to go back to old Sydney town to see where we began. I want to go back to old Sydney town, 'cause I'm an Australian. you.